What's up people, it's Wasabi and I'm back with another review. And today we're gonna take a look at the FK2-DW and this was sent to me by Zowie to share with you guys. But as always with the content on this channel, these are my thoughts, personal opinions and experiences with the product. Now before we get on with the review, here's a quick look at the packaging because that's what you pay for too. First you got the FK2-DW in the box. If you don't see this, then you probably should contact Zowie as soon as possible. You got a quick start guide, a regulation booklet, warranty card, extra control and speed skates, a USB receiver and the adapter, an enhanced 4K wireless receiver, USB-C cable, and that's pretty much all that's included inside the box. Now before we go any further, let's manage some expectations here real quick. Now, just keep in mind that while all DW series mice share the same tech, there are subtle differences in the feel of the buttons due to the variations in the shape, the structure, and thickness of the material. And of course, the biggest difference is how all these elements combine to create a unique experience for each model. Now the FK2-DW isn't a new shape or design, it's been around for many years and was one of Zowie's most popular shapes back in the day. And with this version, you got the benefit of upgraded tech, internals, and wireless connectivity. And with that in mind, this mouse is priced at $150, which is the same as all the other mice in the DW series. The design of the FK2-DW looks exactly like the FK2 from years ago, a classic Zowie look that I'm not a huge fan of, but despite that, I can't deny that Zowie consistently delivers high quality mice. The DW series really feels like a remastered version of their classic mice, and that's very much like how video games get remastered years after the original release. So anyway, the unit shell mouse button design is another iconic Zowie detail. As far as I know, this design has slowly become something unique to Zowie because you don't see it on many newer mice today. I've heard that Zowie sticks to this unit shell structure because it helps the clicks reset much quicker, and knowing Zowie, everything they do is with a purpose. Then there's Zowie's iconic scroll wheel with the thick rubber tracks. The glossy side buttons on the FK2-DW are quite thin compared to other Zowie mice, which makes them feel unique to this model. The design on the bottom of the mouse is the same layout as the Zowie U2 and all other mice in the DW series. And lastly, you have all buttons and switches on the bottom of the mouse that you can use in combination with other buttons to configure your settings. Zowie's build quality is fantastic, and for plastic material builds, it's my personal favorite. It feels great to hold such a quality product in your hand. Mouse button wobble is minimal and the scroll wheel feels securely fitted in place. And the side buttons are also very well fitted in. All contact points, the sides, the top, the back of the hump, and even the bottom are extremely solid with no flexing or creaking at all. The stated weight on the website is 65 grams, and on my unit with the skates that it comes with, it weighs in at 65 grams as promised. Now before I go into more detail with the shape and how it feels from my experience, to put things into perspective, my hand size is 17.5 by 9. So the shape of this mouse is best described as having a low profile. It feels super relaxed, and at the same time, micro adjustments in aiming is very manageable. The button grooves on this mouse are very subtle, and you really only notice them if your fingers are positioned near the tips of the buttons. The front end of the mouse flares out slightly to the sides, but it's not enough to cause any discomfort. However, it does feel more pronounced because of how much the sides curve inward at the midpoint. The sides have a steep tilt angle, which makes it easier to lift and reposition the mouse. This design is also present on the ZA13-DW and the S2-DW, and the side curves in just enough to give you a secure grip, but not so much that you feel locked into a specific grip style. Towards the back, the hips flare out wide, leading into a rounded off tail, similar to what you'd find on mice like the Viper V3 Pro. The FK2-DW has a low profile shape with a mid hump that feels noticeably flat. I really don't get much palm support from the design, except for maybe the tail when it makes contact with the base of my palm. Now, Zowie designed this mouse with the fingertip grip style in mind, so the low profile shape makes sense for that. However, in today's market, it doesn't stand out as an appealing option for fingertip grip style users, which I'll explain more about later. That said, the shape is easy to maneuver, and that's really the last thing I imagine getting from a mouse that looks like this. The coating on this mouse feels great. It's not the grippiest I've used, but it provides plenty of control for gaming. And for a black mouse, I'm pretty impressed with how resistant it is to wear. But of course, no coating is completely immune to sweat buildup over time. To keep it feeling fresh, I give it a quick wipe with a damp cloth at the end of the day, and by the time I hop back on in the morning, it's good as new. The FK2-DW comes with Zowie's speedy white skates pre-installed, just like all the mice in the DW series. Considering today's gamer preferences, I think it's a solid choice to start with. One thing to keep in mind is that Zowie skates are very thin, so if you use a soft or extra soft mousepad, you might notice the bottom of the mouse dragging when you apply pressure. I definitely recommend looking into aftermarket skates. The good news is that all DW series mice use the same skate design as the Zowie FK2-DW too, so there are plenty of third-party options available. And when you're shopping online, if you see skates for the FK2-DW, the U2-DW, or the ZA13-DW, they are all the same, so be a smart shopper and just go for the cheapest option, because sometimes the prices may vary by a couple of cents between each one. Now this part is to help people visualize the different grip styles on the FK2-DW with reference to my hand size. With my hand size of 17.5 by 9, I found myself using a mix between a relaxed claw grip and the fingertip grip style in game to make this mouse work for me. For the regular claw and aggressive claw grip, it's definitely doable, but since the profile is so flat, you're not getting much support from the shape for those grip styles. Now you can use a palm grip, but your hand will be in a very flat and wide position. Personally, I don't use this grip style on the FK2-DW because there isn't much support from the shape, and for this grip style, I'm not too comfortable with a mouse being this flat because it feels like the sides of my hands are dragging across the mousepad. The official recommended grip style by Zowie is a fingertip grip, and while the hump is great for the fingertip grip style because it slopes down low, preventing the hump from bumping into my palm, I found that the length of the mouse is what gets in the way. It keeps bouncing off the fleshy part of my palm based on how I use the fingertip grip. And for this particular grip style, I prefer when the mouse never touches the inside of my hand, allowing for complete freedom to maneuver with just my fingertips. For larger hands though, I think you can make it work just fine. This is just my experience based on my hand size, so take it as a reference. But I think what will bother most people who are looking specifically for a fingertip grip mouse today is the weight. This mouse has Huano transparent blue shell pink dot switches, the same as all Zowie mice since the U2 shape release. What I find interesting is how the click feels differently across different shapes, even though they all use the same switches. You also get a moderate amount of pre-travel with more post-travel towards the end, and the switches feel solid yet crisp, offering a good amount of tactility that feels right for a mouse with this level of build quality. However, if your game requires a lot of spam clicking, this probably would not be the most optimal click experience in my opinion, so just something to keep in mind. On my crispy meter with the way it sounds and feels, I would put it right about here. The side buttons on this mouse are very thin and require a firm press to actuate. In fact, they are the stiffest side buttons I've tried on any of the DW series mice. They also protrude out more than others, so you'll definitely notice that extra feeling. For the side buttons, there's slight pre-travel, but a lot of post-travel, which makes the buttons feel like they go in pretty deep when pressed. The thin design of the side buttons is a result of the mouse's low profile. If they were any larger, you're likely to press them by accident. Despite being so thin though, the buttons feel substantial to click on and are easy to reach. The scroll wheel still sounds pretty awful, nothing new here. It's pretty much the same experience as with other mice in the DW series, but that's only an issue if you're not listening to music or wearing your headphones. What I love about Zowie's scroll wheel is the grip. The wheel is super easy to scroll and the notches are very distinct without feeling too stiff, which I think is a great balance for gaming. The scroll clicks require a moderate amount of force to actuate, but because the wheel is so well balanced, I haven't had any issues with accidental scrolling while trying to click down. And now here's a quick sound test to give you a better idea of how this mouse sounds. The FK2-DW is fitted with the PAW 3950 sensor, which is used across all mice in the DW series, and it's fantastic. And I'm so glad that Zowie didn't go with the PAW 3395, especially for their latest releases. While you might not notice a huge difference between the two sensors other than being able to set a lower liftoff distance, it is important that they are using newer tech. And that's because consumers expect that kind of innovation to be standard, especially for this price point. You can set the liftoff distance to low, medium, or high. And while Zowie doesn't provide exact numbers, mice with the PAW 3950 typically have a liftoff distance of 0.7, 1, and 2 millimeters. So I'd assume those are the settings here. The sensor performs flawlessly, it's stable, responsive, and reliable throughout gameplay and daily usage. Zowie mice are driverless, which means no software. I love driverless mice and it's convenient, you know, because not all programs that I use on my computer fully support high polling rates, and it's just so easy to press a button under the mouse. There are limitations to Zowie's driverless system though, like you can't make fine DPI adjustments and you can't remap your buttons, which can be a deal breaker for some users. But aside from that, how you configure the FK2-DW is the same for all mice in the DW series. So here's a quick look at how I set it up on my Z813DW. First, to connect the mouse to the enhanced receiver, push the power switch to the right, and to connect to the USB receiver, push the power switch to the left. To cycle through polling rates, press this button here. 2000 Hz is indicated with 2 lights on the left and 4000 Hz with 2 lights on the right. And for DPI adjustment, press the button on the right and it cycles through the colors. Adjusting the lift-off distance, to set it to low, press and hold mouse buttons 1 and 4 and power on. For medium, press and hold mouse buttons 1 and 5 instead. And for high, press and hold mouse buttons 1, 2, and 4. For the fast click response setting, press and hold mouse button 4 and power on. And for normal click response, hold down mouse button 5 instead. To turn motion sync on, hold down the scroll click and button 4 and power on. And to turn it off, hold down scroll click and button 5 instead. To check the battery life, just power on the mouse or put it on the receiver and you should see how many bars you have left. Now just for your information, I checked with Zowie about the default settings for the DW series mice. And the mice should have the following settings out of the box. Medium lift-off distance, normal click response time, and motion sync should be off by default. This gives you a solid baseline to start with and you can always tweak these settings to your liking. With 1000 Hz wireless pulling rate, you can expect up to 80 hours of battery life, and at 4000 Hz, you get about 24 hours. These estimates assume the mouse is in constant motion and it takes about 2 hours to fully recharge the mouse. Personally, battery life hasn't been an issue for me, and even more so for Zowie mice because it's just so convenient to place the mouse back on the enhanced receiver for charging. For wireless connectivity, you have two options. The USB receiver, which is limited to 1000 Hz polling rate. It's a great option if you plan to take the mouse on the go, like to the office. Then you got the 4K enhanced receiver, which allows you to use up to 4000 Hz wireless polling rate. This one is probably the one you'll keep on your desk most of the time. And of course, you can use the mouse wired with a maximum polling rate of 1000 Hz. If you have multiple DW series mice, you can use a single 4K enhanced receiver for all of them. Pairing is a super simple process for DW series mice, and here's how you do it just in case you get more than one in future. Unplug the receiver, slide the power switch to the right, press and hold the DPI button for 5 seconds, then you should see it flashing red. Connect the cable to the receiver within 30 seconds and you're all good to go. As far as I know, this only works for DW series models and the non-DW series Zowie U2, but for that one in particular, you will have to do a firmware update first. The mouse has been performing stably and feels great even with high polling rates on my system and my XL2566X plus 400 Hz monitor. The sensor tracks perfectly and the mouse continues to feel as solid as ever. One thing's for sure though, using this mouse feels very stable for aiming, making micro adjustments much more manageable. And I don't feel as shaky with my aim even when gaming on a high sensitivity. But despite all that, I don't enjoy using this mouse as much as the others in the DW series. I know for sure that I definitely prefer other mice shapes from Zowie, and that's because I tend to favor mice with more of a hump for better palm support, especially since I use this mouse for both work and gaming. This is a shape that feels just too flat for my preference. For fingertip grip, it doesn't feel as optimal as some newer options available on the market. Mice for that grip style has evolved, and I don't feel like the FK2-DW offers much benefit in my opinion. You can use other grip styles if you want for sure, it's not uncomfortable, but it doesn't offer much benefit for those styles either. And if you're spending this much on the mouse, you probably want the shape to support your preferred grip style to some degree. The FK2 shape just isn't one that I've been able to fully adapt to even though I had it for months. It's simply not the right fit for me. This mouse reminds me so much of using the Razer Viper V2 Pro, which was my main quite a while before I started this channel. And that mouse has quite a low profile as well, but the FK2-DW is even flatter, which I do not like. But that's just how I feel about the shape. It doesn't make it a bad shape or mouse. In fact, from what I know from the last I heard, the FK2 and EC shapes are their best selling shapes in South Korea. Now, final thoughts and what do I think of its value? I think the FK2 will be well received by gamers who enjoyed the previous wired version for sure. However, given that the official recommended grip style from Zowie is a fingertip grip, it's gonna be a harder sell today. If you are looking for a mouse to main a fingertip grip style, I honestly think you'll be better off with something else. Perhaps something shorter in length with a lighter weight. Fingertip grip users these days tend to go for smaller, lighter mice because they're much easier to maneuver. That said, you can still make it work with various claw grips and the palm grip as well, as long as you're okay with the low profile design. I know for sure that I don't like using a mouse that feels this flat, but some people do. Looking at general value, because I really do not like using the FK FK2 shape, and it's a very personal thing. Zowie's mice in the DW series are very good, and they always find their way back on my desk because I love the quality and feel of them. The charging is super convenient when you have your Zowie mouse as your main. The clicks are very satisfying, and the ironic thing is that even though Zowie mice are made for competitive esports, the buttons just feel so nice to click that I often use the Zowie mouse for casual games as well for a more engaging experience. A couple of things to keep in mind: if you've never used a Zowie mouse before, don't get one hoping for an ultra lightweight experience. Zowie's DW series mice doesn't focus on that, however they are much lighter than the original versions from years ago. Also, because Zowie mice can be quite expensive, it's important to know your preferences before making a purchase. Zowie shapes are very specific, like to the extent that I feel like I need to mention this, and it's not easy to recommend one with confidence even for someone like me who's used them all. For my playstyle, which involves a lot of flicking and occasional tracking, I prefer having some palm support in my palm, and after trying all of Zowie's shapes, the U2 and the ZA13 are the ones that I enjoyed the most. And I imagine it can be quite difficult for you because you don't have all of Zowie's mice right in front of you. So back to my point, for a start, try to find out what you prefer and how you naturally hold onto your mouse. If you are not sure, you can use your camera on your phone and just let it record while you're gaming. Put it at desk level like how I shoot the scenes in my videos. Every angle I use is for a purpose. And you know, even for me, for the longest time before I started my YouTube channel, I always thought that on every mouse I do a palm grip, but then doing this, I realized that especially in the heat of the moment during a game, my hand reverts to a relaxed claw grip without me even noticing. So try and understand a bit more about yourself with how you play, your grip style, and to what degree of support would you like from a mouse. Because every little bit of information will help you make a better decision when you're buying your next mouse. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, please leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, and I guess I'll see you in the next one.